The Galactic Council nexus drifted at the center of 1,000 trade routes, a colossal ringworld of obsidian alloy and radiant light. From a distance it looked serene. Inside, it was anything but. Tier upon tier of floating platforms encircled the central dais, each holding representatives of species older than recorded human history. Some breathed methane, some light, some silence. All of them had come to witness the same thing, the correction of Earth. High Counselor Xyrith Kale rose slowly, his elongated frame casting a shadow that stretched across the chamber's projection floor. His species, the Krell Dominion, had enforced council rule for nearly 8 millennia. He wore no insignia. He didn't need to. The matter before us, Xyrith said, his voice amplified without strain, concerns the human world designated Earth. A low ripple of interest moved through the chamber. Humans were new. Loud. Difficult to categorize. Deathworlders, officially. Survivors of gravity, radiation, and internal conflict that should have erased them centuries ago. Xyrith activated the holodisplay. Earth appeared, blue, whole, fragile. For 43 cycles, he continued, this species has operated under provisional tolerance. In that time, they have expanded fleets, fortified orbital space, and conducted weapons research beyond permitted thresholds. A counselor from the Thaline Collective pulsed bioluminescent patterns. Evidence? Xyrith's mandibles tightened slightly. Classified. But verified. That was enough. It always was. He turned his gaze toward the human delegation platform. 6 figures stood there, dressed in simple dark uniforms. No medals. No ornamentation. At their center stood Admiral Elias Vorn. Vorn did not move. Xyrith raised a data slate. By unanimous enforcement authority, the Galactic Council issues the following ultimatum to Earth. The word ultimatum echoed longer than the translators intended. Effective immediately, Xyrith read, Earth will dismantle all planetary defense grids, surrender deep space combat vessels for inspection and disarmament, and accept permanent council oversight on military development. A pause. Calculated. Failure to comply within 72 standard hours will authorize complete military sanction. Planetary sterilization if resistance persists. The chamber was silent. On dozens of platforms, alien observers leaned forward. Some with curiosity. Some with anticipation. A few with something close to pity. The Thaline pulsed again. This seems excessive. The humans have not yet. They will, Xyrith interrupted. All aggressive species do. History is clear. He looked back at Vorn. Admiral Elias Vorn of Earth. You may respond. The translation field hummed softly. Vorn lifted his head. He was an unremarkable man by council standards, no bioenhancements, no visible neural interfaces, no ceremonial display. Just gray at the temples, steady eyes, and hands clasped behind his back. High Counselor, Vorn said evenly. Only that. Xyrith waited for the rest. Threats. Appeals. Defiance. Humans were known for emotional displays. None came. Do you understand the ultimatum? Xyrith asked, irritation seeping through his controlled tone. I understand it fully, Vorn replied. Another pause. Several counselors exchanged glances. The Avrex matron whispered through harmonic clicks to her counterpart. Why is he not negotiating? Xyrith's voice hardened. Then you accept the terms? Vorn looked at the projection of Earth. For a fraction of a second, something passed behind his eyes, not fear, not anger. Memory. Transmission acknowledged, he said. That was all. The human delegation turned as one and stepped back from the platform. The projection field blinked. Earth's emblem vanished. The channel went dark. For 3 heartbeats, the Galactic Council chamber remained frozen. Then the noise began. Did they just disconnect? One counselor hissed. That is not acceptance, another snapped. It is defiance. Xyretha's claws tightened around the data slate until its casing cracked. They are stalling. They believe we will hesitate. But something in the chamber had shifted. The silence left behind by the humans felt heavy. A junior analyst from the Kerr Authority raised a timid appendage. High Counselor. Earth did not request extension. Or clarification. Or mercy. Xyreth straightened. They have 72 hours. Prepare Enforcement Fleet Theta. I want orbital compliance drills visible on all channels. Immediately, asked the counselor. Immediately, Xyreth said. Fear must precede obedience. Far from the Nexus, beneath layers of atmosphere and secrecy, Admiral Vorn stood in a chamber buried deep under Geneva's arcology. Walls of transparent alloy revealed stars beyond, distorted by defensive fields no council sensor had ever mapped. A young officer beside him exhaled. Sir, 72 hours. Vorn nodded once. Notify Fleet Command, he said quietly. Phase 1 is complete. The officer hesitated. No further message to the Council? Vorn turned, his expression unreadable. They were given all the response they earned. Around them, lights shifted. Displays activated. Signals moved through channels that did not officially exist. Beyond the Kuiper belt, objects long dismissed as gravitational noise adjusted their orbits. On Mars, reactors previously listed as civilian came online at full output. And in the black between stars, something ancient learned that Earth had stopped listening. Back in the Galactic Council Nexus, Xyreth Kale stared at the darkened human platform. They will regret this, he said. None of the older species replied. Because for the first time in recorded Council history, an extinction ultimatum had been issued. And the target had answered with silence. 72 hours was how long the Galactic Council believed fear needed to work. On Earth, it was how long humanity had been waiting. Deep beneath the Geneva arcology, the war room came alive without ceremony. No alarms blared. No speeches were made. Screens unfolded from the walls, revealing layers of space the Council's maps marked as empty. They were not empty. Admiral Elias Vorn stood at the center of the chamber, hands resting lightly on the rail before him. Around him, officers moved with quiet precision. This was not panic. It was rehearsal finally becoming execution. Status, Vorn said. Rear Admiral Chen didn't look up from her console. All shadow fleets reporting green. Gravitational mask integrity at 99.8%. No Council sensor pings detected. Vorn nodded. Proceed. Across the solar system, protocols older than the Ultimatum activated. Buried relays lit up in patterns that no alien algorithm tracked. Orders traveled through quantum-entangled channels designed specifically to avoid Council interception. Beyond Neptune's orbit, space bent. Objects that had masqueraded as rogue asteroids for decades shifted alignment. Their hulls unfolded like slow, deliberate breaths. Engine signatures bloomed briefly, then vanished again, swallowed by engineered gravity wells. Fleet black silence had awakened. Back at the Galactic Council Nexus, confusion began as a whisper. A junior sensor analyst frowned at her station. High Counselor, we're detecting mass anomalies near the Sol system. Xyreth Kale didn't turn. Explain. They don't match known fleet signatures. Or stellar debris. They appear intentional. Xyretha's mandibles clicked. Human theatrics. Ignore it. Another voice cut in, sharper. Enforcement Fleet Theta has lost passive telemetry on approach vectors. That got his attention. Xyreth turned slowly. Lost telemetry how? Blind, the officer replied. No interference detected. Sensors simply return nothing. That is impossible, Xyreth snapped. Our arrays are calibrated to. A sudden alert chimed. Then another. Then 5 more. Around the chamber, Council platforms flickered as feeds updated in real time. Enforcement Fleet Theta, one of the Council's oldest and most feared formations, had ceased broadcasting. "They've gone dark," someone whispered. Xyrath stared at the projection. "They are holding position." "No, High Counselor," the analyst said quietly. "They are gone." On Earth, Vorn watched the same data from a different perspective. A tactical overlay showed Theta's fleet markers fading out, not destroyed, not exploding. Simply removed. "Confirm status," he said. Chen's jaw tightened. "Theta's command vessels have been neutralized. No casualties reported beyond fleet infrastructure. Survivors are drifting, communications offline." Vorn exhaled slowly. "As planned." A younger officer swallowed. "Sir, the Council never saw this coming." "They weren't meant to," Vorn replied. Humanity had learned early that the Council did not fear violence. It feared unpredictability. So humans didn't escalate. They redefined the rules. Back in the Nexus, panic crept into voices that had never known it. "This violates Council law," a counselor barked. Xyrath raised a clawed hand. "Earth has not yet declared hostility. This may still be contained." "Contained?" the Avrex matron hissed. "They just erased an enforcement fleet without firing a visible weapon." Another report arrived. Then another. "Outer Council listening posts are failing. Trade routes near Sol are collapsing. Navigation beacons are returning corrupted spatial data." The chamber filled with overlapping voices. For the first time in centuries, the Council did not control the narrative. Xyrath activated a direct channel. "Patch me through to Earth. Now." The channel connected instantly. Admiral Vorn appeared, standing exactly where he had been before. "No urgency. No triumph." "Explain yourself," Xyrath demanded. Vorn met his gaze. "You issued an ultimatum." "Yes," Xyrath said sharply. "One you have not yet answered." "I answered it," Vorn replied. "You mistook silence for delay." Xyrath's voice lowered. "You have attacked Council assets." "No," Vorn said calmly. "We removed a threat approaching our borders." "The Council defines threat," Xyrath snapped. Vorn tilted his head slightly. "That assumption is why this conversation exists." The feed trembled as another alert flashed behind Xyrath. "High Counselor," an aide whispered urgently, "long-range scans indicate multiple human fleets emerging from non-detectable vectors." "How many?" Xyrath asked. The aide hesitated. "Enough." Vorn's voice cut through. "We studied your doctrines. Your response times. Your reliance on intimidation. You never considered the possibility that compliance was camouflage." Xyrath leaned forward. "You are risking annihilation." Vorn's eyes hardened, not with anger, but certainty. "We already calculated that risk. And accepted it." A heavy pause settled between them. "You wanted Earth disarmed," Vorn continued. "You never asked what we built while pretending to listen." The channel cut. In the chamber, Xyrath stood motionless. Around him, the ancient certainty of Council dominance fractured, piece by piece. "They prepared," someone murmured. "No," Xyrath corrected, his voice tight. "They planned." Far from the Nexus, human fleets slid through space like controlled shadows. They did not broadcast. They did not threaten. They moved with purpose, severing command structures, isolating enforcement nodes, dismantling authority without spectacle. This was not conquest. It was correction. On Earth, Chen looked at the data streams stabilizing across the galaxy. Council response capability is collapsing faster than projections. Vorn allowed himself a single nod. "Because they still think we want to rule." He turned back toward the stars. "We don't." Behind him, the words Phase 2, containment illuminated across the main display. And across the galaxy, species who had never feared anything before began to understand. Earth had never intended to fight fair. The first worlds to notice something was wrong were not the Council's capitals, but its edges. Outpost relays went quiet without warning. Enforcement depots lost command authorization. Patrol fleets found their orders invalid, their navigation keys revoked by systems that no longer recognized Council hierarchy. There were no explosions. No heroic last stands. Authority simply stopped working. Inside the Galactic Council nexus, the chamber no longer resembled a place of governance. It felt like a storm shelter that had failed its purpose. High Counselor Zyrith Kale stood at the center dais, surrounded by collapsing projections. One by one, enforcement sectors across known space dimmed from active blue to inert gray. "This is a coordinated assault," a counselor shouted. "They are dismantling us." Zyrith did not respond. His focus was locked on a single blinking indicator: Council command integrity, critical. "How many systems remain under direct control?" he demanded. The answer came softly. "Less than 12%. Silence spread faster than panic ever could. Far from the nexus, human fleets held position at the edge of every strategic node the Council once relied upon. They did not advance. They did not threaten planets or trade lanes. Their presence alone collapsed resistance. No species wanted to test weapons that erased fleets without visible force. On Earth, Admiral Elias Vorn watched the final phase unfold with the same stillness he had shown since the beginning. "Council response?" he asked. Rear Admiral Chen shook her head. "Fragmented. Disorganized. They're issuing contradictory commands. Most enforcement units are standing down." Vorn nodded. "Open a channel." The connection formed almost instantly. Zyrith Kale appeared, no longer towering. His posture had changed. Not defeated, but exposed. "You have made your point," Zyrith said, carefully. "The Council is prepared to negotiate revised terms." Vorn studied him for a long moment. "You don't negotiate after issuing extermination authority." Zyrith's voice tightened. "You risk destabilizing the entire galaxy." "We stabilized it," Vorn replied. "By removing a system that ruled through fear." Zyrith leaned closer to the projection. "What do you want, human?" Vorn's answer was immediate. Non-interference. Mutual recognition. And the permanent dissolution of Council enforcement power over sovereign worlds. The chamber behind Zyrith erupted. "That is impossible. The Council cannot exist without." Zyrith raised a clawed hand. The noise died. "You came prepared," he said quietly. "This was never about survival. It was about leverage." "It was about ending the threat," Vorn corrected. "You mistook restraint for weakness. We learned long ago what happens when power goes unchecked." Zyrith's mandibles flexed. "And if we refuse?" Vorn's gaze hardened. "Then this conversation ends. Permanently." The meaning was clear. No invasion. No genocide. Just isolation so complete the Council would become irrelevant. Zyrith looked away, toward the silent chamber. Species who had once supported him avoided his gaze. Others watched the human feed with something dangerously close to respect. "You have already won," Zyrith said. "Why humiliate us further?" Vorn's voice softened, not with mercy, but finality. "We aren't humiliating you. We're correcting a mistake that lasted too long." Zyrith closed his eyes. "Very well," he said. "The Council accepts your terms." Around him, systems powered down. Enforcement protocols terminated. Control keys dissolved into archival data. The Galactic Council, for the first time in its history, disarmed itself. The channel closed. In the Nexus, the lights dimmed as emergency power stabilized what remained. No one spoke. No one celebrated. The age of unquestioned authority had ended without ceremony. Across the galaxy, messages spread faster than fear ever had. Earth had not conquered worlds. It had dismantled a threat and stopped. Trade resumed. Borders stabilized. Smaller species exhaled breaths they had been holding for centuries. On Earth, the war room displays returned to calm starlight. Phase 3 complete, Chen said. Vorn clasped his hands behind his back. Stand down all fleets. Maintain observation only. An officer hesitated. Sir, that's it? Vorn allowed himself a faint, tired smile. That was always it. He turned toward the viewing window, where the stars burned with indifferent beauty. Humanity had not announced its dominance. It hadn't needed to. The galaxy had learned on its own. Far away, in the dimmed halls of the former Council Nexus, High Counselor Zyrith Kale stood alone. The chamber that once echoed with power was silent now. He finally understood what the humans had meant. They didn't seek revenge. They ensured it would never be necessary again. And across the stars, where fleets once gathered and ultimatums were spoken, there was nothing left to hear. Only silence followed. Power does not vanish when it is broken. It lingers, reshaping those left behind. The first cycle after the Council stood down, the galaxy waited. Not for retaliation, not for conquest, but for the thing history always delivered after upheaval, chaos. None came. Trade lanes reopened without tariffs. Border patrols stood idle, uncertain whom they answered to. Species long bent under enforcement mandates began making decisions for the first time in generations, and discovered they could. On Earth, Admiral Elias Vorn attended no celebrations. He stood alone in the upper observation deck of the Geneva Arcology, watching civilian traffic return to normal rhythms. Cargo haulers crossed orbital lanes. Research stations resumed broadcasts. Life, stubborn and indifferent, moved forward. Rear Admiral Chen joined him quietly. The Avrex matron transmitted a formal communique, she said. They're dissolving their compliance treaties. Asked if Earth intends to replace the Council. Vorn didn't look away from the stars. And what did you tell them? That Earth has no interest in ruling anyone. Chen hesitated. They didn't believe me. Vorn allowed a brief, dry exhale. They will. Across known space, the absence of the Council felt louder than its presence ever had. Systems once bound by fear scrambled to redefine alliances. Some faltered. Others flourished. Not all welcomed the change. In the remnants of the former Nexus, High Counselor Zyrith Kale stood before a reduced assembly, no dais, no command fields, only a circular chamber stripped to its frame. Representatives appeared as projections now, not out of reverence, but caution. We must rebuild, one counselor insisted. Without enforcement, the galaxy will fracture. Zyrith listened in silence. And who will lead this rebuilding? Another demanded. You? Zyrith finally spoke. The Council cannot be what it was. A murmur followed. We ruled through certainty, he continued. And certainty made us blind. You speak as if the humans were right, someone hissed. Zyrith's mandibles flexed. They were prepared. That is not the same as right. But it is enough. The session dissolved without resolution. Elsewhere, smaller powers moved quickly. Defense coalitions formed. Knowledge-sharing pacts replaced coercive oversight. Earth did not sponsor them. It did not need to. The example alone was sufficient. Weeks later, a secure channel opened at Geneva. Vorn accepted it without surprise. Zyrith Kale appeared, not in ceremonial regalia, but simple attire. A private transmission. You left us intact, Zyrith said. You could have erased the Council entirely. Vorn met his gaze. Erasing institutions doesn't erase the behavior that built them. Zyrith studied him. You believe someone else would simply take our place. Eventually, Vorn said. Fear always tries again. Zyrith tilted his head. Then why act at all? Vorn paused. For the first time since the ultimatum, he chose his words carefully. Because someone has to draw the line the first time. Zyrith considered this. And if fear returns? Vorn's answer was quiet. then humanity will still be watching. The channel closed. On Earth, life adapted to the knowledge of what had happened. There were no parades. No monuments. Only policy shifts, new treaties, and a subtle change in how humanity carried itself beyond its home system. They were no longer petitioners. They were peers. Years passed. Children on distant worlds grew up hearing stories not of a conquering empire, but of a moment when the galaxy stopped shaking. Historians argued over details. Analysts debated whether Earth's response had been inevitable or accidental. None of them argued about the outcome. In a lecture hall on Luna, a young cadet raised a hand. "Sir, why didn't the humans take control when they had the chance?" The instructor smiled faintly. "Because they didn't fight for power. They fought for distance." Distance from what? From ever being threatened again. Back at Geneva, Vorn prepared his retirement papers. His hair had gone fully gray now. His movements slower, but his eyes unchanged. Chen glanced at the documents. "You know they'll call you back if anything stirs." Vorn nodded. "I know." He looked once more at the stars. Somewhere out there, civilizations were choosing their own futures, for better or worse. That was the risk. That was the point. As the lights dimmed in the command chamber, the galaxy settled into something unfamiliar, uncertainty without terror. No ultimatums echoed through space. No fleets gathered to enforce obedience. Only quiet borders. Independent voices. And the unspoken understanding that somewhere, beyond sensors and assumptions, Earth remained alert. Not as a ruler. Not as a threat. But as a reminder. And so, long after the Council's authority faded into archives and warnings, one truth endured, passed quietly between worlds that now spoke freely. When humanity finally chose to speak back to the galaxy, they didn't shout. They ended the argument. And let the silence do the rest.